What's goody in the hoodie, everyone? I am back and I am here today to do a what if, and this is going to be my first what if I've ever done, and I'm very excited about doing this what if, which is just going to be what if Gojo was evil and what if Geto was good. So if you like content like this or like anime content in general, especially Jujutsu Kaisen, be sure to subscribe. We have plenty more on the way, and without further ado, let's get straight into the what if. Now, there are several specific points that could have happened where Gojo could have ended up turning evil, such as after Gojo got the advice from Suguru Geto, where Gojo just ends up deciding to go against that advice and go evil, or when Yuji Itadori gets his first death and Gojo decides to kill the higher-ups and actually goes through with that decision, etc, etc. But we're not going to be going over any of those parts and any of those ways where Gojo could have turned evil at that point, purely for the simple fact of I genuinely don't think there is any chance at all anyone can do anything against Gojo, especially if it's like an adult Gojo by that point. No. The Gojo we're going to be focusing on is a Gojo from very long ago, earlier than any of the points that I said. The Gojo from chapter 75, right in the middle of his battle against Toji Fushiguro. The point in the timeline we will be referring to is right before Gojo says the line of him being the honored one. At this point, we find Gojo apologizing to Amanai, apologizing that he's not angry for her, that he doesn't feel vengeful towards everything or anyone at all right now, and just everything right now with him feels so right. Everything feels absolutely right. As he drops the line, "Throughout heaven and earth, I alone am the honored one." But what if that feeling was more encapsulating? What if that feeling that everything was right, that everything right now in that very moment was right, truly took Gojo? What if Gojo truly believed himself to be the honored one, truly believed himself to be able to decide the fate of everyone? After all, Gojo was the strongest. No one could stand in his way. He just needed to prove that to the one person who somehow managed to do so, to Toji. He needed to prove that he had the right to be called the honored one, that he alone was the honored one, and that was the only thing that mattered in his moment, in that moment in his mind. He was no longer a blank canvas. No. At that moment, he became an entity of pure power, an entity of pure, raw desire to achieve the world he wanted, because Gojo was the strongest. Gojo deserved everything. If he was the strongest, then he deserved to rule the world how he sees fit, not according to politics, not according to money, not according to any of that. It should be him. It should be him, for no one on this planet could stop him. And he needed to prove that in that very moment, as he finally eliminated Toji Fushiguro in one swift movement, not caring about the fact that Toji mentioned having a son, or at least not seeming to care that Toji had a son. We then walk back into Suguru Geto walking into a room with the Star Vessel Association. However, where he was likely expecting people, he saw bodies. All of them were dead, on the ground, just recently murdered, and in the center of them was a man standing, a man who used to be his friend, but he couldn't be. It was too monstrous to be his friend. It was Gojo Satoru, as Gojo had just recently finished killing them all. Not that it would take him any time, he was just taking his time, slowly enjoying it, and watching each of them beg for his life, when he just didn't feel a whim at all to kill them. As he looked to his friend, and he sent him a smile, before the two of them began to talk, Gojo telling him his new way he was planning to live his life, how he wasn't going to hide anymore, how he was going to show his abilities, his power, and Geto suddenly was very cautious, but Gojo instead just laughed. Gojo's new power had driven him completely mad, to the point where he had no respect for Geto's power at all. He viewed Geto as just an insect in comparison to him. Sure, Geto might be number 2, but it didn't matter whether he was number 2, number 3, or number 4, and who was number 2 and number 3 and number 4. He would always be number 1, as he decided to let Geto go, because that was what his gut was telling him. That was what his whim was telling him. But before he let Geto go, he did tell Geto one thing. He told Geto about Toji's son, and to get Toji's son for him. He didn't feel like raising him, but Toji had earned that Toji's son had earned a strong life. While Gojo had no care at all for Toji and had no desire at all to raise Toji's son, he respected Toji. Toji was the strongest man he had ever come across and ever fought in his life. So he thought, as a reward, he might as well get Megumi out of the Zenin clan situation and instead get him into Jujutsu Sorcerers, because maybe then he could be raised to turn out strong and maybe be able to fight Gojo in the future. So Gojo left, allowing Geto to live for now. As it was then after Gojo had basically left Geto, left him there to think, Suguru went through a lot of emotions in that moment. Self-doubt, self-hatred. He was questioning his value as a sorcerer, questioning his value as a friend, on if he truly had any value, if he was truly strong. Maybe if he was a little bit stronger, he could have saved Gojo. Maybe if he was a little bit stronger, he could have backed Gojo up, rather than Gojo becoming this. Maybe if he was a little bit stronger, Gojo could have respected his thoughts enough to actually listen, rather than just be left alone to die, left alone to be felt as absolutely useless and unable to do a single thing. But Geto snapped himself out of it, snapped himself out before he could go too deep in, as he felt his cursed energy getting even stronger from those negative emotions that he just felt. But it was nowhere near enough to triumph against Gojo, against the new monster of Gojo that had just awakened. He would need new power, and he would need it fast. While a part of him doubted that Gojo would be training as often, especially with the new level of power he was at, he knew with each and every passing day, Gojo would get more and more dangerous. He needed to return to Jujutsu High. He needed to return and warn them all that Gojo is now rogue, that Gojo has become a monster, that what everyone had feared had come true, because Gojo was now this unstoppable beast. And they would need to get stronger, and they'd need to get stronger very, very quick. After his trip back and getting a certain young individual, he returned to Jujutsu High and immediately warned all the higher-ups, and he warned Principal Yaga, all of them, to be ready, to be prepared for Gojo, because Gojo had gone completely evil. However, right before he could try and warn the higher-ups, he found they were already killed by Gojo Satoru, because Gojo's whim told him to kill the higher-ups. He spared Jujutsu High out of a whim, but he killed the higher-ups out of that same whim. It was in that moment Suguru really figured out just how much of a monster Gojo had come. There was no talking to him. There was no talking to him at this point. He was too strong, and all that he cared about was proving the fact that he was strong enough to do whatever he had wanted. He basically took out the head of the Jujutsu world, and now he was on his way to take out whatever he wanted next. As it was then, right before he could focus more on those thoughts, someone approached them. Someone from behind, who had a cursed energy signature that he had never sensed before. It was a woman with black hair and black eyes, but more importantly, with a stitch mark on their forehead. A potential ally that they could have gained in that very moment. That ally was Kenjaku themselves. Now I'm just going to take a slight break from the narrative, because I can tell there are going to be a bunch of you questioning why Kenjaku is actually choosing to help them. Well, Gojo completely goes against what Kenjaku wants for the world. Kenjaku wants cursed energy to be optimized and reach a new peak, a peak beyond the Heian era. Sure, Gojo might, if Gojo wins, he will rule the world basically as his, but after he dies, cursed energy will be much weaker because of the fact that he no longer exists, and that is not what Kenjaku wants. Kenjaku wants everyone to be extremely strong and for cursed energy to be optimized as much as it can be, which is why he's going to help their side and not actually help Gojo's side. On top of that, this will also result in strong sorcerers on this side being made, which is why Kenjaku is helping their side. All Gojo cares about right now is the fact he is the strongest and he can do whatever he wants. For those of you questioning the body that he has right now, while we don't know for sure if it's Yuji's mom, we also don't know for sure if it's not Yuji's mom, and it's easier for me to just do this than make its own vessel that we do not know anything about. Anyways, right back into the story. As Kenjaku decided to introduce themselves, in nature, their body's name was Kaori Itadori, but their true name was Kenjaku, and in order for them to succeed, no lies must be kept in between them. They must be able to work together, which is why they requested for them to be brought back to Jujutsu High so they can train with each other, so they can use and come up with an ultimate plan to truly defeat Gojo in the time span that they have. As it was then Gojo began his own plot. Being the troll he was, he decided, why not have some fun, as he appeared in front of the White House, and he decided to make a reference. As he announced himself on public TV, he announced who he was, he announced the powers that he has, he announced that he was their new god, and if anyone dared to go against him, dared to go against what he desired, he would kill them with no hesitation, and to prove his might, he would eliminate each and every military he could, starting off with the United States military. He was planning to go to each and every single nation, eliminate their strongest force, and prove why he was at the top, prove why he had the right to rule, all the while he was going to enjoy each and every single nation and everything they had to give for him before leaving. And to see this announcement, it broke several members of Jujutsu High's hearts, especially Shoko. Shoko, while she knew Gojo was not the best of people at heart, and same with quite a lot of them did, they didn't expect him to be that bad, to be that consumed by this point. They thought Geto was maybe over-exaggerating a little bit. Maybe this was just one of Gojo's moments where he was just going over the top. But no, that was the best confirmation that they ever had. Because right after getting the news of the higher-ups being killed by Gojo, they got a news of what Gojo's true plan was. But this only just hardened all of their resolves. Hardened their resolves to make sure that Gojo would die. Because this was the creature that they created. This was their fault. This was something that they created by not being proper friends to Gojo, by not being proper ways of helping Gojo out, because instead of being terrified by their power, they should have been there for him. They should have been there to help guide him on a better way, rather than not letting him get consumed by his power like he had been. But it was too late now. It was too late now for regrets, as they began to plan, each of them ready to die, ready to put down their lives for the cause, all for the sake of making sure Gojo could be defeated. Now, getting past the Infinity Barrier was going to be by far the hardest thing for them to accomplish, especially because of the fact Gojo was now going to have it constantly active. Originally they had a way, the Inverted Spear of Heaven, but Gojo had made sure that was destroyed. However, that was when Kenjaku taught them all a way to bypass Gojo's Infinity Barrier. A technique he had been working on for a long while, and now would be a better testing field than ever before, especially considering Gojo was looking to be one of the strongest 6 Eyes users in history. Domain Amplification. A way to make sure all of your hits would guarantee land on the person. However, as a result of using Domain Amplification, you would not be able to use your curse technique in the process. This, while it did help them, at the same time they still were worried. After all, it wasn't like Gojo was no hand-to-hand slouch. Gojo's physical stats were through out the roof by this point. There was no way they could contest with Gojo in an actual fistfight, even if all of them were to go together. Gojo would do too well, and he'd be able to potentially teleport out if he wanted to. However, that was when Kenjaku told them that they only needed to stall for a little bit, and that his true plan was to seal Gojo inside of this, as he took out the prison realm to show them all. The prison realm was a place that could contain Gojo hypothetically forever. After all, no one was around or could free Gojo from it by deactivating it, and no one would. No one would let this monster out ever again. So now it was just a matter of actually being able to stall for long enough to get him inside of it, to make 1 minute of time pass by in Gojo's brain, in Gojo time. However, that was going to be proven to be an extremely hard concept for them to do alone. However, it was then another ally arrived, another person who had a potential way to help, the only special grade sorcerer on the planet, Yuki Sakumo. And with Yuki there, it brought hope into the sorcerer's eyes. It brought hope into a lot of them, that they had a chance, a potential way to take out Gojo once and for all if they all united together, and if they all attacked perfectly accurately at the same time. If they waited until Gojo had just finished one of his assaults on the nations, then maybe, just maybe, they would have their best shot and best chance at actually defeating Gojo. They also were going to develop some poisons just in case as well. While they weren't sure if Gojo's Infinity Barrier was able to pick up the differences between poisons yet or not, it would be a good thing for them to have in case it does work either way. They had to try everything. They had to try everything all to make sure Gojo would lose in that very moment in order for their plan to work, because the very fate of the world depended on it. A total of 1 year had passed. 1 year where they all sharpened their skills, no longer having a Gojo to rely on, and instead a Gojo as an enemy. Unknown to them, they were mimicking a certain era that none of them had really thought about, that they were mimicking this era up to this point. But they all had gotten massively stronger. As with each passing day, they felt more and more hateful, more and more guilty, because all of this was their fault. As a result of that, they had all grown much stronger, especially the tutelage of Kenjaku and Yuki assisting them, and all of their focus, all of that on defeating Satoru Gojo, the man who had seemed like a god far away from them, a god they would have to reach in order to help save this world. But Geto had woken up prepared for the final battle 1 year later, against Satoru Gojo that would be coming today. he was leading the squad in order to fight him for the first part of their plan to work. Gojo had nearly finished taking over the world by this point. It wouldn't take him this long normally, it was just the fact that he decided to take a sweet little time and enjoy himself and enjoy his life. Something they all knew by this point, and they all knew that Gojo would become extremely cocky, something they would take to their advantage. However, Geto took a final moment to say goodbye to the 4 children he had adopted: Megumi Fushiguro, Sumiki Fushiguro, Naniko, and Mimiko, telling all 4 of them to remember to stay strong and protect those who cannot protect themselves, protect the weak, become strong sorcerers in the future. A part of him wanted to promise he would be back, but he knew he couldn't make that promise. He was fully willing to give his life away, so he gave them a final goodbye, leaving them with Principal Yaga, someone he knew he could trust, as the group prepared to launch their attack and their final stand against Satoru Gojo. And that is going to be the end of part 1 of this What If. Yeah, there's going to be several parts to this. This was like a really fun thing for me to do. So if you really like this type of story, be sure to leave a like and be sure to comment down below what you think is going to happen next, who you think is going to win, all that good jazz. And also comment down how you think Satoru Gojo turning evil would go, if you guys think that my story is actually pretty good. I'm kind of curious what you guys' thoughts are on this entire thing. So I'm going to see you all later. Peace.